Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5 o'clock to 5:30 session of the 2021 OpenSimulator Community Conference. In this session, we are pleased to introduce the presentation OpenSimulator as a Distributed System, the Future of the Metaverse. Our speaker is Michael Christopher. Michael is the CEO of Digital Multiverse Incorporated, a company formed to provide unified virtual and mixed reality business environments. His path to this position was starting early, doing computer repair, studying software engineering, and going into project management to create a comprehensive hosted virtual office solution for startup companies to use. Please check out the website found at conference.opensimulator.org for speaker bios, details of the sessions, and the full schedule of events. Now, the session is being live streamed and recorded, so if you have questions or comments during the session, you may send tweets to OpenSimCC with the hashtag #OSCC21. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin the session.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here and see you all again. Well, I can't actually see you because I kind of had to hack my way back in through the tornado. But you know what I mean. Since we all already know what we're here for, let's just jump right in. I don't think many of you missed the news from Facebook where the public came out in support of the Metaverse as the next frontier. Most of us have known this was coming for quite a while, and that's why this event already exists. And as Maria mentioned, there's a lot of new visitors to a lot of grids, and I expect that's just going to continue to increase. Between the robust and the hypergrid, OpenSim is already essentially a distributed system. Facebook's commitment to support the Metaverse should make a significant contribution to the global awareness adoption of the concept. But there are things that we need to do to ensure that the Metaverse stays open to anyone on any platform without the need to sacrifice data and privacy rights to any company to get you there. Did a lot of laughing listening through because a lot of people touched on a couple of things I'm going to say over the last day. Let's start with the end user's experience. The average end user, a home user, they just don't want to learn how to install and configure a viewer. And that's one of the biggest reasons for them not to already be here. It looks to me like the sim on a stick fork is the best format to use for that end user. Lets each user hold their avatar and inventory locally and have their own home space that they log into and start from. And anywhere else they're going to would be a teleport or a hypergrid dump. That part's pretty easy. We just, well, I say easy from the user perspective. Development, we just need to port that over to that hardware, which might not be quite as easy of a task, but that's what we're tackling. Give me just a moment. I seem to have gotten the wrong note here. Okay. So the next obvious step is the view report for that immersive gear that lets users come straight into the OpenSimulator grid with off-the-shelf hardware and software. So obviously intercompatibility with the hypergrid matters, and so using a direct port of a core branch should make that easier to keep up to date and interoperable. When you're going on to directory services, one of the bigger elements for businesses to be concerned about. We already had the hypergrid for jumping from world to world. Maria has already got a grid list at Hypergrid Business News, and we already have default grid lists built into the viewers. For a more cohesive integrated experience, couldn't we just integrate that grid list directly with the landmark system to give new avatars that initial list of sites to jump straight to? And on the persistent grid server side, they can just maintain the list of other grids, public regions, possibly even with a short description of the region, so that users can connect to a single world of their choice to then search for the type of content they're looking for across the metaverse. Several people have already mentioned blockchain, crypto concepts. I know there's at least one already specifically designed to index blockchain data for searchability. We could explore tying those together explicitly, or just using a similar concept. I think somebody mentioned earlier Sand and Mana, Decentraland, and what's their name? Working on the centralized, unified digital currency. We know that something is needed because a lot of our creators and users are not using the same currency. So I'm not going to take a lot of time on that subject because that's well covered. The only real relevance is how it relates to what businesses need to make use of virtual reality. Two of the biggest needs are ownership and security of company assets and the environment being persistent, continuously available to its employees. That means monitoring and maintenance of the servers, keeping their users' information secure, environment accessible, content updated. Sounds a lot like any flat web server today, doesn't it? As many of you know, we at Digital Multiverse have been working on business applications for virtual and augmented reality for years, ever since we realized there was no provider to rent a hosted office, virtual office solution from for a startup that had partners all over the place that wanted to work together. We got our first offices up in our own world pretty quickly, but to make our office fully usable for what we were working on at the time, we had to find a way to bring the Apple desktop into OpenSimulator that wouldn't be prohibitively expensive, because some things you just need to work on an Apple, at least as a developer. Once we had that identified, of course, we had to spend some time on that element as a separate component, because some companies just aren't ready for a full VR environment, but could still benefit from an Apple-based desktop as a service. I'm sure you've all seen someone spill coffee on a workstation or a laptop. A fried MacBook costs a lot more to replace than a Chromebook or a Pocket PC. That solution is still in beta testing to get feedback before we release it, but it's working. One example of a consumer-facing business use for an OpenSim environment, we've got a simple model with no branding put up over in our booth, but the real business would have an actual model of their gym. Prospective members can look at the facilities and see, for example, the number of people at the gym, or the size of the pool room, or maybe looking at the layout of the equipment rooms, or what type of equipment they have. For members, selecting a piece of equipment would give them a list of options available to that user. For example, if they have the matching internet-connected exercise equipment at home, they could start a training session from there, working with their personal trainer directly, but remotely. Most of those equipment already have something built in, but they're all separate systems that often connect only with their trainers right now. So you might find yourself with half a dozen different trainers. Integrating through a gym would let you work with a single trainer on all your workouts. There are a variety of other elements, but I'll let your imagination take it from there for now. An office building, on the other hand, might well be employees only, and provide an integrated real and virtual environment for that mix of some people working in person and some people working remote. They might even go the more eco-friendly route of putting their entire office environment in virtual reality, except for the server and record rooms, and have no cars driving back and forth, parking on big blacktop and concrete lots. With businesses being in VR and consumers having relatively easy access to VR, that makes the world much more at our fingertips than ever. You can travel to and see places you never would have time or resources to go to, work at companies around the world while still having the in-person personal interactions, and play with toys and tech before you buy them without having to watch a video of someone else and wait for that 1 second showing just what you want to see, or find a time to walk into a local store to get a demo. There'll be a progression of hardware to work through. Virtual VR gear and AR gear are still rather different, but that's where the sim on a stick mobile port would go. There's a lot of pieces that need to work together, and we've got a lot of people here working on quite a few of those directions. I just skimmed over a lot of really dense topics. So I'll go ahead and open the floor up here for questions. Who wants to start?
Well, MC, thank you for that introduction to the multiverse and this distributed system. So now, one of the questions that came in through a private chat was, where are we going with these interactive and interoperable components? Where do you see us taking this to the next level? We also have another
that's
question.
right.
Yeah, we have another question too, if you prefer. It's how do you detect folks in the gym, for instance?
Most gyms have a check-in desk, so when you come in, you're checking in, and then you check out on the way out. So at the base level, there's that. So when they check in, the system logs them in and puts an avatar in the gym. If the gym is equipped with cameras, with the right kind of cameras and software, then it could keep track of how many people are in each room automatically. Eventually, technology will be reasonably priced enough that they can put more precise motion tracking in if there was customer interest, but they'd have plenty of time for feedback before they were ready to try and implement that.
And Steven spoke up and said that be using RFID, for example, as one of the technologies to integrate with. Any other questions? Yeah, he said jinxed. Any other questions for MC? Well, that first one was really kind of global. It was very broad in the sense of what do we think are the next steps to realizing this vision, MC?
I'm thinking the two directions. One being working on porting the sim on a stick fork into the VR viewers, and the other being working on the distributed directory system so that the end users can find their way between worlds more easily.
Now, do we have any feedback from any of the folks who've worked with the code or understand some of the limitations of this technology for use in a, when you say virtual reality, you mean on a head-mounted display device like the Quest 2 or one of those kinds of
Yes.
systems? Yeah.
Yeah, the Oculus system is the first models we're starting on, and then looking into the Vive and the HoloLens, the other lines after that.
Sun Tzu
I
asks,
see Sun's question.
do you? Okay, great. Well, let's repeat it back for the recording. How would this compete with well-established technology that is already in place, like iFit?
It would be an integration rather than a competition. If you have or use iFit and have a gym membership, well, I can't answer that very clearly because I don't know iFit, but I can assume it's a fitness app, whether for remote training or tracking.
Now, Frank Ruloff notes that it will not wear for 8 hours, so there's a time limitation. And I see Kaylee West adds, I've heard that Peloton has become a thing in the US in terms of exercise in virtual environments. How would it, what MC envisages, how would that differ?
That you would be able to work with the trainer of your choice. For example, a single trainer at your local gym that you do all your workouts with rather than just that equipment.
So it's this notion of interoperability with a variety of different kinds of equipment.
Yes. Rather
Now,
than trying to compete and replace everybody, make everything work together.
well, thank you. Are there any other questions before we conclude this session? It certainly stimulates our thinking as to what are the limitations, what are the opportunities, and of course, there are going to be barriers, so don't think of it as everything's going to integrate smoothly immediately. That would be very ambitious, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this is
So
going to be
you're
quite a
really,
challenge.
yeah, you're really doing a call to action to start thinking in an interoperable way. But the difficulty, of course, is all these independent ways of, the lack of standards across a lot of appliances, right?
Yeah. That's a very good summary.
Well, thank you, MC. I don't see any other questions coming in, and I don't. We want to thank you for your informative and valiant presentation. So let's see. As we wrap this session, as a reminder to our audience, you will want to check out the conference.opensimulator.org to see what is coming up on the conference schedule. You won't want to miss our next session, which is at 5:30 p.m., and it's a tour of the Barbara Truman Planetarium with myself and Spinoza Quinnell. Now, we also encourage you to visit the OSCC21 Poster Expo in the OSCC Expo 3 region to find accompanying information on presenters and to explore the hypergrid resources in OSCC Expo 2 region, along with our sponsor and our crowdfunder booths located throughout all 6 of the OSCC Expo regions. Right after the planetarium session, we have 3 hours of music on the OSCC music stage. So stay tuned. We're ready to party. But first, thank you again to MC, our speaker, and to you, the audience.